the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
And ladies and gentlemen, it is officially the start of MHRT Season 2. And we want to welcome you all to the newly minted MHRT Network. We are a fan-led Broncos-based podcast doing our absolute best to fill you in on all of your Denver Broncos news. We go live every Thursday at 7654. You know where to put them. On YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And not only do we have the MHRT podcast on Thursdays, but we also have Broncos Talk that airs at 7654 on Tuesdays, and Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue on a new night, 7654 on Fridays. And we also have a brand new pregame show called The Neigh-borhood that goes live before every Broncos game. Now today, we want to welcome in a very special guest. He's a writer, reporter for the Denver Gazette and the Colorado Springs Gazette, as well as Denver Broncos Twitter royalty. Ladies and gentlemen, George Stoia.
Yeah. Let him know.
What's up, guys? What's up? I have to say, that intro, that was pretty sick. I don't know whoever made that. Props to them. That was pretty cool.
This guy right here.
The boss
Don't
of
give
Johnny.
him a bigger head than he already has. He already fits in that hat, man.
They put their heart, their blood, sweat, and tears in.
It's a very large hat that I have to put on this head. We do want to thank all of our commenters, viewers, whatever you may call them, especially Savage Sev Cisneros. Did I say that right? I think I said it right. He shouted us out on his YouTube channel, and we got like 25 followers. It was subscribers. It was amazing. I appreciate it. Love you. Thanks for being on the show here with us. Dave Glassman. We've got Landon Mobad. We got Bree in here. And EJ. Also, the Mile High Prophet. Remember the drive. Broncos' sixth commandment.
Remember the Yep.
Now, so the
Six
Broncos
about memory loss.
So the Broncos have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. They go back to practice on Monday and then have Tuesday off. But we do have a whole lot of transactions that just happened because we had roster cuts. So I'm going to try to go through them so that we can all kind of be on the same page. So on the 31st, we traded Trinity Benson for a 2022 5th and 7th round pick, and they got Trinity Benson and a 2023 6th round pick.
I mean,
how are we feeling about that trade?
It's still. I think it's great value. Personally, like the dude has never seen a regular season game, and he's been on our practice squad the last 3 years. So I mean, if Detroit's desperate enough to give us a 5th and a 6th, what did you say?
5th and 7th.
5th and a 7th for him. Great for him. I mean, he wasn't going to see a ton of playing time, even if he made the 53 with our roster depth. So I think like in Detroit, their number one right now is Tyrell Williams. It's probably Hawkinson. Let's be honest. So I think he's going to see playing time over there. He gave us value. Like, good for him, man.
So George, did that come out of nowhere for you, or what did you think?
It was definitely a shock, and part of that's probably because I've been like the head of the Trinity Benson fan club since day one. And
wait, that was a thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first day of training camp, he caught like 2 touchdown passes. Like, hey, that kid's gonna make the team, and everybody kind of laughed at me. And I was like, hey, it's gonna happen. So I kind of spoke it into existence, and then he got traded. So I would say it was a little bit of a surprise, but it makes sense because I think that the way I look at it is if you watch these preseason games and what the Broncos want to do this year, I think they're going to be running a lot of 12 personnel, which means they're going to have 2 tight ends on the field. And in the preseason, you didn't see too many 3 wide sets where they had 3 wide receivers on the field. So when you have 4 guys as good as they do at the top there, not counting Deontay Spencer, who really hasn't shown a whole lot on offense, is more just a special teams guy. I think it makes sense in that. And then I think that they really like Seth Williams and his potential as much as he didn't have a great training camp and he really didn't do much in the preseason. I think he only had one catch in the preseason. And it was that flip pass from Locke in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're really high on him. And obviously I think Tyree Cleveland, we can all say we all thought he was going to make the team. And I still think they have hopes that he can be a contributor eventually. So, adding him back to the practice squad, they can always elevate one of those two guys. I don't think Kendall Hinton's a guy that's going to get elevated unless they're in a pinch. But I think they feel confident in those four. And again, if they're going to be running the ball a lot, which they're going to be running the ball a lot this year, I think that, they're comfortable with those four guys. The worry, though, is that, Tim Patrick has had injury problems.
Mm-hmm.
KJ Hamler, we all know, it seems like every other week he's got a hamstring problem. Cortland Sutton is coming off of obviously an ACL injury. So that's kind of where I'm like, I don't know if 5's the right, but maybe they also feel comfortable that Deontay Spencer can come in and can contribute in some fashion. So, I mean, it was a little bit of a surprise, but in Trinity's perspective, it's great for him because I think he's going to go play. I think he's going to play in Detroit.
The most talented person on that roster now.
But I think also from George Payton's perspective, he's talked a ton about how he just wants more darts to throw at the dartboard for these drafts. And I know that he gave up a pick, but he got 2 in return. And I think that that's the key thing when you're thinking about George Payton's perspective is he's just going to keep compiling draft picks so that he can go out and try and get another Jonathan Cooper like he did this last year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Seth Williams, I heard it going around just like a notion that maybe they targeted Seth Williams a little bit less during the preseason in hopes that he would be able to come back, like other NFL teams wouldn't get a spot on him as much when he hit waivers, and that maybe he'd potentially come back, which, I mean, if that was the case, it seemed like it worked.
Yeah, I mean, they could have done that. I don't think they did. It is interesting. I thought the last preseason game, I don't remember his snap count, but I felt like it was a lot lower. Like he didn't play as much in that game. And at first I thought it was an injury, but now that you kind of mentioned that, maybe that's what it was. But Seth has shown flashes in practice. And when you look at his stats at Auburn, I mean, he was really productive. I know he kind of dipped last year, but I think that in a pandemic season, you kind of give everybody the benefit of the doubt, especially in college football. So I think that he's still a guy, and he's so big and physical that I think that's when you look at Trinity, not to say that he's not physical, but he's definitely a speedster. And when you already have a guy like KJ Hamler that kind of fits that role, and even Judy to an extent, it's kind of like, you don't want to have too many speed guys. You need some physical, wide receivers. And so I think Seth kind of fits that role. And again, when you're coming down to picking a guy that's been on the practice squad the last couple of years, and like you said, hasn't played in the regular season at all, versus a rookie that you think has high upside, you're probably going to stick with the rookie and say, we'll just put him on the practice squad. Let's go get picks for the other guy. I think that was the mindset with the Broncos on that.
So George, as someone that covers the team, describe what those 2 days are like in your life, like start to finish, cut day and then practice squad signing.
Oh, hell. It's a lot of putting my good pal Mike Kliss on notifications and just kind of sitting at my computer and waiting for him to tweet things out. But no, it's interesting. And this is my first real training camp. Last year I joined the beat towards the end of the season, and it was a pandemic season, and it just wasn't the same, and nothing was in person. And obviously I didn't go through training camp. And so that was my first time really experiencing cut day and the waiver stuff, and trying to understand, does IR count towards the 53? Does it not count? Does PUP, all that kind of stuff, and doing all the math, which, I haven't done math since freshman year of college. And it's so, hard. Yeah. So, it was really interesting, but, I was also texting back and forth with some agents, got to know a couple of some of the players' agents that gave me some insight to what they thought was going to happen. So that was helpful. But other than that, it's pretty much just a numbers game is the way I looked at it. It's like, okay, we all know Kliss is probably going to break a lot of the news. And so it's just like, okay, I'm going to wait for him and then kind of, add it all up and keep a spreadsheet and things like that.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, you were saying this is your first training camp. Like, this was our first off season, and boy, howdy, did we pick the wrong off season to be like in the first year of this. Yeah. Good night. It was nutty.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So after that, we had we traded for linebacker Jonas Griffith from the Niners for him and a 7th round pick in 2022, and we gave them a 2022 6th and a 2023 7th round pick, and then put Bassie and Dawson on the PUP list.
Right. Now, I did hear that they increased the practice squad size to 16, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they also changed it where players can come in and out of the PUP list and not have to go through like different hoops or whatever. So I guess it's like they can come straight into the active roster, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's right. And just going off that briefly, Bassie's a guy that I know they really, really like. And people forget how good he was at the end of last year before he got hurt. He was their starting nickel and he was playing really well. So he's a guy that, we've been talking constantly about who's CB6, right? Who's going to be the 6th cornerback. And I think it's Bassie's job still to lose, because Kerry Vincent, as much as I think, again, he's a draft pick and I think they think he has potential. I think he might be the fastest player on the team. I think KJ Hamler would have something to say about that, but he ran, I think he ran track at LSU or something like that. So, he's extremely fast, but Bassie's, consistent. He's a Vic guy. Vic really likes him. And so he's a guy that when he gets back healthy, I would not be shocked at all if he's on the roster, 1, but 2, even getting some playing time.
No, do you know the reason why they would have kept Jonathan Harris and cut Shamar and then did the exact flip the next day? Do you know, was there any benefit to that?
I have no idea. Somebody tweeted that to me the other day, replied to one of my tweets. And I have no clue why. Maybe they thought they could trade Jonathan Harris. That's the only thing I can think of. Other than that, I'm like, and honestly, I thought Shamar was a lock. Like when I put out my projection, I thought he was going to make it. And I thought he had a really good camp. So I was a little surprised by that. Maybe I don't see the defensive line as well as others, but I think everybody on the beat thought Shamar was going to make the team. And Jonathan Harris was a guy that I just hadn't seen him a whole lot during camp. There wasn't anything that stood out about him. So, and that's not a knock on him. Again, I know the defensive line doesn't always get all the glory, but I was surprised by that. And I don't know why they didn't just cut Jonathan and keep Shamar when they were going to do that anyways. It's all, look, man, like the GM, I could never be that. I think we all pretend that we could be like a general manager and all that goes into that, but there's so much more that goes into it than I think any of us really realize.
And I think we're getting a look more of what Peyton is like. Because when he was over in over at the Vikings or whatever, it was mainly Spielman, right? So it's like you don't know exactly what was his call and what wasn't his call. And now that we actually get to see it, we kind of get maybe some sort of a trend that we can kind of tell what kind of a GM he's actually going to be. So far, super impressed.
I agree.
Savage. What a great looking panel. Let's go Broncos. Thank you. Let's see here.
Yes.
So we have a couple questions here. The first one is from KB82, Kenneth Booker. If the Broncos have a top 10 line, do you see Teddy throwing 25 plus touchdowns and the running backs getting into the end zone 15 times this season? If they do, what do you see the record being?
Am I answering this question?
Anybody? That's kind of loaded.
I thought that was directed
it was
at
the
George.
thinking portion there.
It's like 3 questions in one. I got to think.
Yeah.
I will say I'll take the over on the running backs touchdowns. 15.
Yeah.
I will take the under on Teddy. Ooh. I think that if the running backs are scoring 15 plus touchdown, how many did Melvin have a year ago?
9.
9.
Yeah.
9.
Not even double digits. It was like
how many did
9.
Phillip have?
Less.
Like 1?
I don't even know if he had any.
2.
Honestly.
There was the Chargers one, the one that's ignited that drive. That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, I'm still going to take the over because I'm a big time believer in Javonte Williams. And I also, as much as I'm a believer in Javonte Williams, I also think Melvin Gordon is going to have a really good year. I think he's looked really good in camp. And I thought he looked really good in the preseason game the other day. And so these rumors that they're going to trade Melvin Gordon, I think are not true. I don't think they're even interested in doing that right now. That could be down the line. Like if this season goes south and they know that, they're not going to make the playoffs or whatever, maybe they make a move because Melvin's on his last year. But right now he's definitely running back one. But Javonte, I think those two combined, and I'm telling you, and I've been trying to say it since the beginning, Mike Boone is really good. The first few weeks of camp before he got injured, he looked really, really good. I mean, there's a reason that they let Royce go, and that's because I think they truly believe in Mike Boone as that third guy, and he gives them such a different pace behind Melvin and Javonte. So I'll take over on 15+, and I'd take under on the 25 touchdowns for Teddy, but I do think he'll be close to 20. I think he'll be around that 20 range.
Royce went to who?
Carolina. That's a pretty good backfield now. CMC, Chuba, and now Royce. That's a pretty good looking backfield.
It kind of sucks because I feel that a lot of NFL analysts, ever since Teddy Bridgewater was named the starting quarterback, that they haven't given him enough credit. And I feel that it didn't really matter if, let's say, they would have given it to Drew Lock. They would have started bad-mouthing Drew Lock about the season he had last year. And with Bridgewater being named quarterback one, I figured like, okay, they'll start giving us some more credit because obviously they don't feel the same as they do about Drew Lock. But little did I know that they actually went the other way, and they were still casting doubt that Denver would be lucky to make the playoffs. So I just hope that Teddy Bridgewater can go out there and just prove them wrong, because it's one thing to badmouth one quarterback on their play, but when they change it and you don't give the team credit, then it's time to put up or shut up.
Yeah. Travis Tarbox, evening, fellas. Finally watching, busy at work. Denver Broncos for life. Time to get back to winning again. I think that's the whole
amen, Travis.
Media thing is just we're not relevant right now. We're not winning. So we'll get there.
So, George, what has been your favorite moment, or what's the best behind the scenes story you could tell us about your first camp?
Yeah, give us something juicy, something good.
Mike Kliss called me a kid today. Because it's funny that the beat itself, I've gotten along really well with everybody on the beat, and I'm sort of like, I wouldn't say I'm like the happy-go-lucky kid, but I'm definitely like the youngest person on the beat. And so I come in and I'm very thankful to get to cover the NFL at 25 years old. It's like, hell yeah, this is awesome. Awesome. So I kind of get a lot of shade sometimes about just being the young guy. But I'm trying to think if, today there was some good, interesting back and forth between Kerry Vincent and Caden Stearns at practice about Texas going to the SEC, which obviously as an Oklahoma guy, I'm very invested in. But Kerry was telling him, if you guys can't win in the Big 12, how are you going to win in the SEC? And Kerry's right. Texas isn't going to win the SEC. Texas isn't going to win the Big 12 either. Again, coming from an Oklahoma guy. But I'm trying to think.
Oklahoma's going too, right? SEC?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But OU will win the SEC. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. Yeah. So,
let's write that down. Someone write it down.
Yeah, that's on the record. Yeah, that's on the record.
Where's Johnny with his hot take button right now?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, I think that, I don't know if this is behind the scenes, but I think something that, and I'm kind of writing about this right now, is I think we've seen the maturity of Jerry Jeudy grow a lot. And that's something that I think it's hard for fans to see because you guys aren't there like talking to him most days, but you can just tell he's really focused this season. And I don't know if that's because, and he won't come out and say this, but I think that there's part of him last year that saw some of those other rookie wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, get all this praise and obviously have great seasons. And I thought Jerry had, a relatively good rookie season. I mean, a really good rookie season, to be honest, considering what he did. But I think obviously he was criticized for the drops. Maybe sometimes his body language, it didn't seem like him and Drew were always on the same page. Yeah. But this year he seems really focused on himself. I think he only had one drop all of training camp, which was obviously impressive. And so I expect a big year out of him. And again, I think his maturity is just through the roof right now. And that's huge for a kid that's 22 years old and is supposed to be the best, weapon, maybe the best player on the team. Is the future of this franchise. So I think that that's been really cool to see kind of behind the scenes, just the way that, I mean, and I wouldn't say he's taken on really a leadership role, but guys definitely gravitate towards him. And you can tell he's really comfortable in his own skin, and just, he's kind of become a funny guy, someone that, makes a lot of jokes and things like that, which again, is hard to tell if you're not, there and talking to those guys every single day.
I think it's hilarious that he's gotten so much crap for all the drops when CeeDee Lamb had one less drop than him.
I'll say it wasn't that bad. It just looked really bad.
Yeah.
Right.
So George, you mentioned the word gravitate, and that is a word that both Vic and Peyton used in talking about Teddy, and that they gravitate to him just with his style, his personality, his the way he is. What is your impression of his leadership, and just what stands out about him from your standpoint?
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that asked both those questions about that. And those are the answers they gave. But I'm working on a feature story, and I don't want to give too much away on Teddy, but I've gotten to know some people that are really close to him, and I think that that's just how Teddy's always been. He's always been this really humble kid. And when you look back at the things that he's been through in his life, not only in the NFL, but, his mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I think he was 12 or 13 years old. And I think that when that happens to you at such a young age, you are kind of hardened on things, and you become, I don't know, vulnerable in some way. And I don't know if I'm speaking, I don't want to speak for him, but I think that kind of shaped him as a young person. And I think that's kind of helped him turn him into a leader that he is today. And I think that he just, and I don't think this is maybe why he won the job. I think it maybe played a part, and this is nothing against Drew. I hope people don't take this the wrong way, but there's something to be said about his veteran leadership and his experience. And I think that when somebody can come into a locker room like Teddy has in, what was it, April that he was traded, really 1st of May, and have those guys immediately gravitate towards him. And I'm not talking just offensive players. If you watch practice, I mean, he's talking to Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson. He's really hit it off with those guys. Shelby Harris, Von Miller and him have gotten extremely close. I think that says something when a guy can come in and do that. And I don't know what exactly it is. I think it's this team first mentality that he just wants to win. And he talks about it all the time. And, he talked about the other day, do you want to be a quarterback or do you want to be a celebrity? And he wants to be a quarterback. And that's not to say, I mean, you look at, Baker Mayfield, my guy from Oklahoma, he's a celebrity, right? Yeah, but he kind of does both, but it's clear Teddy's never been one that wants to be in the spotlight. He's not a guy that likes to do that. His interviews, his press conferences that we talk to him, I'll ask him like, Teddy, where do you think you've improved the most? And he talks about himself briefly, and then he goes, but I think that the reason I got better is because of this guy, that guy, and whoever else, right? And so I think that speaks a lot to his personality. He is a team first guy, and I know we say that, and that's cliche to say, but it's so true with Teddy. And again, that's not to say Drew isn't, but you can just tell in the way that he speaks that that's all he's thinking about. Like his motto is, I just want to get my unit to the end zone. And I mean, that's a good motto to have, right? It's not about what can I do better. It's what can we do better. And I think that's kind of, again, I don't know if that answered the question, but that's kind of his personality.
All I'm going to say is like Glenn focused on the word gravitate and segued into a question. So from now on, you're doing all the segues. That was pretty impressive.
But you know what, George, real quick, it seems like Teddy actually starts each of his pressers with almost a prepared statement where the other players just wait for the questions to be asked. Is that unusual? It
is unusual. At least from my time covering, I guess I cover college football. None of the players did that, but I haven't covered. I don't know if Tom Brady comes out and gives an opening speech, but it's always something positive too. He always has something good to say and something positive to say about the team. And again, that goes back to that team first mentality. So and it's just professional, right? Like that's just professionalism. And again, that's not to say that the other guys are not professional, right? That's just something that it's obviously on his mind. I think he enjoys speaking to us every once in a while. I guess I don't really know. Maybe he would disagree with that, but I think he also looks at the media. I mean, these guys read what we write, right? They listen to what we say, and I think that when we come out and we, Teddy comes out and says these opening statements, and we write about it or we put out whatever he says, I think guys see that, and I think he knows that, and I think that's part of those players wanting to gravitate towards him because, like, man, he's always talking positive about this team. He's talking positive about his teammates, and I think they know it's not fake. It's very real.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, we say that all the time. Like anytime that Ellis or Elway or Peyton makes a decision, like they heard it here first, and that's why they made the decision.
Right. Well, I saw somebody on here say I think Drew will learn a lot from Teddy. Yeah. I think that those small things like that are things that Drew can learn. And again, that's not to say that Drew's not good at that and he's not good at connecting with his teammates. But he did come out and say that the day that he didn't win the competition, that one thing he's learned a lot from Teddy is just how he communicates. And that's not just in the huddle, but that's like in the locker room with teammates, how he talks to people. And, again, that some of that just comes with maturity, right? I mean, Teddy's 6 years older than Drew. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you look at Drew and again, we don't know what's going to happen this season. I mean, Teddy could go down next week and it's Drew's season, right? Yeah. But we don't know what's going to happen if Teddy starts the whole year, whatever. But I think that when you talk about Drew's potential, I think that learning behind a guy like Teddy is going to be more beneficial than, say, Joe Flacco. And I wasn't here for the Flacco years, but from what I've understood and read is that Flacco didn't really take Drew under his wing. And I think that, I think Teddy will. So I think that that's very good for Drew.
That's because all Flacco could do was stand there. Drew was moving too fast.
Yeah. Now I'll give another segue. We had a dog bark, and you had a great article. I loved it about Teddy Locke. So that the connection that Drew and Teddy have with a common equipment manager that they each had in college. And how did you come up with that story?
Pure luck, man. Pure luck. I was working on a Drew Lock feature story, which now is probably going to get nixed because he's not the starter anymore. But I was talking to one of his former teammates from Missouri, who is now at Missouri as like a recruiting coordinator or something. And we were just briefly talking at the end, like just casual back and forth. And he goes, "Yeah, it's real funny. We actually have a guy here at Missouri that knows both guys." I said, "Oh, really? Like what's he do?" And he's like, "Oh, he's our equipment manager. He's the equipment manager at Louisville too." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I think they're really close, like to the point that he named his dog after the two." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And I was like, "Can I get his phone? Can I get his phone number, please?" Because immediately that hit my head. Like that's a story in itself. Like that's awesome. And so that was like, I was talking to him the Thursday before the Seattle game, called the equipment manager the Friday night before the Seattle game, wrote it overnight, and then put it out Saturday. Cause I was like, we all kind of knew that after that Seattle game, they were going to name a starter. So I was like, I got to get this out quick. But yeah, it was mostly, I just stumbled upon it doing a different story that will probably never even see the light of day. So, but it was pretty cool.
So KB82, besides Miller and Chubb, who do you see coming in third in sack total? I mean, you got to think Jones or
Jones. I think Draymond Jones is about to have a monster season. Yeah, I really do.
I would say
do we see anything out of Cooper at least at all this year? I mean, he'll be rotational, but he's not going to be like.
My prediction was 3 sacks. I think he might get 3 sacks this year.
Cooper?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. Cooper, 3, maybe 4.
What about Reed?
Malik's my guy.
Because he's coming off 8, but that's because he was starting last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say 3 for Reed.
I don't want to be a bummer, like a bummer guy, but I just, with Vaughn and Chubb both coming off injuries, I just don't think they're going to get all the way through the season. So I think Malik is gonna probably have. I mean, was he on that list? What did he say? Chubb, Miller, and so I think Malik might. And Malik, if you look at his stats, statistically, he was better than Chubb last year, and Chubb went to the Pro Bowl or was voted to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
So, but I'm all in on Draymond Jones. I think he's going to have a huge year.
Yeah, I'm excited for him.
I agree.
Bree's got one. She said, how are we feeling about the O-line, specifically tackle outside of Bowles? How do we solve that continuous headache? Is it just a matter of trial and error? Feels like a QB protection issue still. And I'm still flabbergasted that they kept Cam Fleming on the team. They brought him back. Like, why?
He's backup. Yeah, well, every team carries 4 offensive tackles.
Himmelman.
Or most teams do. Well, Himmelman, the problem with Himmelman is he didn't get a whole lot of reps. And so I don't know why. Maybe he struggled in a different area that we don't know about. But Cam was, on the second team all training camp. So I always thought he was going to make the team, even though he wasn't particularly good. And they also, I believe he is guaranteed $1 million this season. So I think you're better off keeping a guy like that and hoping that he figures it out. And he's also, to be fair, he has quite a bit of experience. And I think that's the other thing that they looked at is when you have a guy like Calvin Anderson, as good as I think he can be and has been this camp, he doesn't have a ton of experience. And Cam, as much as he was not impressive in camp or in the preseason, he has played quite a bit of football for different teams. So I think that was the reasoning there. But to answer Bree's question, I guess she's basically asking about right tackle. Since we kind of know what they're getting in Bowles. I think Bobby Massey's looked really good. And I think that he can be, he's clearly a starting right tackle in this league and a very good one at it. His problem is going to be injuries and can he stay on the field and be healthy? Because last year in Chicago, he had that knee injury, missed 8 games. And so if he can stay healthy, they'll be good there. And even if Calvin has to go in, I've seen a lot of good things from Calvin that I think that he's more than ready. I think it was just more of an experience thing that got Bobby that job.
Broncos are used to injury history. It's fine. You have or want to get or do get.
Especially with our offensive line.
Dave Glassman, did Lindsey make the 53 in Houston? You got to think so.
Yeah. He's projected to be RB1 potentially.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. And then David Johnson's going to be
Mark Ingram's behind him, I think.
Third down back potentially. And then I think they're going to rotate the mark and
this is nothing against Lindsey being the first string running back because I think he is, he's an NFL caliber running back, but the Texans are trying to lose. Like they don't want to win this year.
Dumpster fire.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Unless Cam Newton comes to town.
Absolutely.
So I think they shouldn't trade for Cam Newton. If I'm the Texans, I want to lose. Like I do not want to win this year. Like
he's free. You don't have to trade him.
Okay, so speaking of Cam Newton, do we see Cam Newton going to any team right now?
Oh yeah, Denver Broncos.
No, stop.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
I said Colts, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Just to back up Wentz.
I think Washington or Texans are probably the most.
No, Washington's got Fitzmagic. They're fine.
Yeah, but also not that this is going to be a thing, but I know that Revere is very big into the vaccination, and I know that Cam Newton is not vaccinated, and so that might not be a thing also. So I could definitely see him going to the Texans for sure.
Nah, I think he goes to a team that really, really needs a backup quarterback. So I'm gonna say,
is he gonna be a backup though? You think he would? You think he'd be signed up on that?
I don't see any other team starting him. I don't think so. Not
can
right
he still start? I think is he lost to Mac Jones.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that
Mac Jones is good.
Yeah, I'm real good.
I'm on the Mac train.
I wanted Denver to take Mac Jones because you think of like a Shermer fit. How do you not think of Mac Jones?
Hey,
it's different,
right?
He's gonna be
Boggins.
It's different. It's different. McCown's has it. Or McCown's, gosh, Josh McDaniels has it locked down over there. He knows what he wants. Mac Jones is it. I don't think I still don't think he would have prospered in the Broncos office, but that's just me, I guess.
So we talked about Malik a little bit ago, and it seems like he's really taking Cooper under his wing, which is interesting because Malik's not an old guy. He's an undrafted free agent, has had success, but yet he's still mentoring a guy who could potentially, I know it's going to be a sidekick, but potentially could be his replacement in the future. Does the camaraderie on this team, does it really stand out to you? Because for me, I'm really feeling that vibe that these guys really seem to get along.
I think that yes, but also if they start to lose, no. Because I think any team I think they feel really confident, I will say. And again, I wasn't here the last 2 years when I know that they struggled early in the season and obviously are 0-7 under Vic in September. But I do think that there is, especially on the defense, I think that they know that they're good and they're ready to prove it this season. I think that you get that sense, especially from guys like Shelby Harris, Justin Simmons, even Malik Reed, like you said, who is, at that third position at outside linebacker. I think they're really close. I think the offense is starting to gel. I think part of the reason maybe they're not on the same level as that defense is because of the quarterback competition. And it was kind of like a who's the guy. And so that's why I think it was a good thing that they finally announced and just picked someone, even if it was really, really close. But yeah, I think they feel confident. I think they know, like Shelby came out yesterday and said that we know we suck in September. And I think it's good that they recognize that and that they want to fix it. And it's all right. It's all good to say that. And now they've got to go do it. But I think the first thing with the problem, right, is you have to acknowledge it. And for them to come out and acknowledge it publicly to the media, I think is a good step in the right direction. So yeah, I think the camaraderie is high and Malik's just a good guy. Like I've gotten to know him pretty well. I've written a couple stories on him. I wrote a feature story on him last season when he was, towards the end of the year when he was really playing well. And I think that's just his personality. Like he's always going to take guys under his wing and teach them what they can. And, I think for Malik, it's really an interesting season because depending on what happens with Vaughn, right? If this is Von Miller's last season, do they keep Malik and have Malik be that replacement? Obviously, whoever replaces Vaughn that's big shoes to fill. Or does Vaughn, or do they sign Vaughn back? Like does Vaughn go out, have a great season? They say, all right, we're going to bring Vaughn back. Then I think you're looking at Malik leaving, right? Malik's probably going to go because he's a good enough player that he should be. He's underpaid, right? Like he's
Barrett move.
Yeah, I mean,
Shaq Barrett move, yeah.
Exactly. So I think that he's in a really interesting spot. So, but again, to your point, to have someone like that who knows that, hey, this could be my last year here, to take under his wing a guy like Jonathan Cooper who could theoretically take his job next year, I think says a lot about one Malik, but also just kind of the team in general.
Well, like Malik had a good year last year, and I think like as far as sack wise, he would be able to get close to replacing the production that we might have gotten out of Vaughn. The problem is Vaughn has that ability to make a play when we need it that we haven't seen from Malik yet. And I think that's what we were missing the most out of Vaughn last year was like we get to a certain situation, it's like, all right, we need a sack. And that's where Vaughn would go get a sack. And Malik wasn't able to show that.
Yeah.
So I want Malik Reed to stay. I just don't know if he's going to stay as a Vaughn replacement.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they draft someone. I mean, I haven't looked at this next class, or maybe they think Jonathan Cooper can be that guy. I mean, we've seen a lot in the preseason, but again, I mean, you're asking a lot to replace Vaughn, no matter who it is. So
I agreed.
It's going to be tough, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen with Bradley Chubb. And I know that George Payton keeps saying that they're going to extend him, and I fully believe that. I think they should, and I think they will. But, he missed practice today, and I'm not saying he's going to miss next week's game. And Vic came out and said he's not going to miss next week's game. But let's say he goes down with another injury and he just keeps being injury prone. Is he a guy that they do sign to a long-term deal? And then all of a sudden, this is like doomsday scenario. You lose Vaughn, Chubb keeps getting hurt. I mean, then you're really stuck. Yeah. So then you're really stuck in a tough spot.
George, of all the tickets hanging up behind you, which one was the most memorable or favorite game you attended?
Yeah, those are all my credentials from games that I've attended and stuff. I had some really fun college football games, covering Oklahoma. I got to cover 3 college football playoffs. And I would probably say, and Oklahoma fans won't like this one, but the Rose Bowl in 2017 when they played Georgia, and I don't know if you guys remember that game, but it went to double overtime. Georgia came back, in the second half down, I think 17 or 14 points, tied it up, went to double overtime, and Georgia won at the end. I would say that's up there. This game was underrated, and you guys probably don't remember it either, but OU, Kyler Murray's year was by far the most fun because OU had just an awful defense. Like they were just horrifically bad on defense, but their offense was like the greatest of all time. And so it would just be like every game was like 62-55 against like terrible teams. Like Kansas was putting up like 40 points on Oklahoma. But I remember they played Army, and Army, they've run that weird offense where they basically just run the clock the entire game. And they Army damn near beat OU at home. And I remember it went to overtime, and OU had to win in overtime to beat Army at home. And the best part was the game was on pay-per-view, so no one could watch it. And so everybody was, tweeting about it and watching it on like Twitch streams. Yeah. So that one was a lot of fun too. So
how sad would Rose Bowl if Kyler chose baseball?
Do what?
How sad would you have been if Kyler chose baseball?
I told you guys before we got on here, I got to know Kyler pretty well.
Yeah.
And I had a good sense about halfway through that season. I was like, this dude's not playing baseball. Like there's no way, because he was just so good that season. And I was like, and you could just tell the way he spoke about it, because I had covered him playing baseball too, because it was always a big story at OU was him playing both sports. And you could tell, like, after talking to him at a baseball game, he loved baseball, but there was something different after football games. You could tell he just really loved it. And he was so good at it. And he was, especially when it looked like he was going to get drafted by the Cardinals and all that stuff, it was like, this is like perfect for him. So, it would have sucked for him to go play baseball. And I think he also realized too, like, I know he was a top draft pick, but in baseball, but like he was going to be sitting on a bus for like 2 years playing minor league baseball. Like he wasn't going to, whereas he was going to go immediately be a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's like, why wouldn't you do that?
He had to have known early before. Quite early. The Cardinals had to have let him know that, like, listen, we really want you. We're really gonna, like, so he could make that decision. So he could go like number 1 overall. Like, had to have let him know early. That's not right.
Orange Weekly
game you mentioned. Hey guys.
Yeah.
Hey, Orange Weekly.
Go follow them too. They're awesome.
Yeah.
So George, that Rose Bowl game, I think that was the reason Baker got picked first by the Browns. His leadership in that game, I remember watching him after the offense scored a touchdown, and he's yelling at the defense to get him back on the field and pumping him up and everything. And rarely do you see a quarterback interact like that way with the defense. And I believe the next play or the next other play was a forced fumble run in for a touchdown. That was just an amazing.
Yeah. Baker's the ultimate leader, man. Like I've covered some great players and great dudes, but I've not seen a better leader than Baker. Just the way that he, spoke to the team and the way that guys, again, gravitated towards him. And he was different than Teddy in terms of the way that he spoke. And he was very vocal. But
hilarious that was questioned, him coming out to his leadership ability, which is like the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that Rose Bowl game that I don't know if a ton of people know. It was a big story that week, as he had the flu. He played that game sick. He didn't practice all week ahead of that game, and then played like really sick. And I remember talking to him after the game, and like he could barely speak because his voice was just so gone. And he was not feeling good, but and that's why OU fans, of course, are like, well, if Baker Mayfield was healthy, we would have won that game. But Baker's the man. He's a good dude, and I think he's gonna have another really good season this year for the Browns. I think the Browns are gonna be really good. So
Travis Tarbox, and any of you guys see James Palmer go off on NFL Network yesterday? It was great. He basically called out the NFL's bias against our Broncos.
No,
did he? I didn't see that.
I'll take it.
I'm going to.
I'll go to see if I can find that clip.
I only saw the picture of him in his shorts, but he was wearing the shirt, tie, and
that dude's busy now. He covers like 4 or 5 different teams now.
He's also probably like the best looking guy on the beat too.
That's true.
It's good.
KB82. I remember when CU beat number 4 OU with a field goal time expired.
So do I. 2007 in Boulder, man. I was like 12 and I cried. I was so upset because that was Sam Bradford's freshman year. OU was undefeated, I think, at the time. And you guys ruined the season. So congrats. good for you. So
George,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say Orange Weekly is talking about the biggest discussion point has been our special teams. I'm kind of waiting for the first game for like one special team snafu, and then you see Fangio just go to McMahon and be like, Leave. Go. You're done.
So much cushion. So much cushion for that dude.
I just don't understand why he's still there. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Dirt on somebody.
Like, other than Pat McAfee, is there anything else you could tell me about Tom McMahon? No.
I'm gonna offer a no comment on that. But for the panic button situation, I wouldn't push it yet, but I would have my hand over the button week 1. So that is all I will say about that.
I think you can circle you circle your finger around that button because it's.
Is that like?
And we're playing a former special teams coach. That's now the head coach of the Giants.
Oh, that's
right. Well,
and
if he messes with us, he's like,
so George, when they have the press conferences, do they let you know in advance who the players are or who's going to be made available, and what name on the list excites you because you know you're going to get something good?
They do most of the time, and I often put in like, hey, I want to talk to so and so about, because I'm working on a story or whatever. Guy that excites me the most is Jonathan Cooper, for sure. Jonathan Cooper is, I don't know how to describe, like, every time he comes up, I just smile because like he's smiling and he's got this like big smile, and so it's just like, I love talking to this guy. And you think about his story, and having 3 heart ablations, which I personally know. I guess I don't know, but my mom had a heart ablation recently, and so I know like how like difficult and serious those are. And for him to have 3 in 1 month, I don't think people realize how difficult that is. And for him to come back and be able to play this season and still be playing football is incredible. And so for him to get up there and then just like speak about just anything, I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, I think it was him that we saw the video, when he was drafted, all the neighborhood kids. Yeah. I mean, that speaks to his personality. So like, I love listening to him. Honestly, Teddy is really, really good because he gives you some good insight to certain things. Justin Simmons is always fantastic. I mean, there's a reason he's won, I think, the last 2 media awards, which is given out to guys that are super honest. And, Garrett Bowles is good because, you're always going to get a soundbite from him. He's got a little crazy to him because he's just like so out there sometimes. And he just has an edge, he's just a fierce guy, and he's so loud. His voice is like the deepest voice I've ever heard in my life.
Shelby called you guys peasants yesterday, though.
He did. Shelby's good too. Shelby's always got something to say. There's something always on Shelby's mind. Drew. Honestly, I think Drew's one of the best interviews on the team because he's incredibly honest and forward. And so I love talking to Drew, which unfortunately, obviously, we won't be getting to talk to him much this season unless he's becomes the starter. But I'm trying to think who else. Josie Jewell. Josie Jewell is really, really good. Just intelligent guy. You can see why coaches like him and why he's the guy that's often calling out defensive plays for them. Kareem Jackson's usually pretty good. He's not. It's funny. He's like easily talks the most trash on the team. You can see that in practice. But then when he gets up to the media, he doesn't always do that. He's kind of more reserved and laid back, but he still gives some really good insight. So there's quite a few. I could also tell you who's not any good. People that we don't ever request, but I probably should.
Tom McMahon.
No. Is there a question you wish you could ask and get a straight answer from somebody? And if so, what's the question and to whom?
I think there's a lot for like George Payton. I wish we could ask straight up George Payton, why not Justin Fields? And I think that, again, I don't blame him for taking Pat Surtain. I don't at all. I think that I just want to know what was it about Justin Fields, because I think we've seen some reports out there that it was epilepsy or it was because he doesn't go through all of his reads or whatever. Those were the reasons behind. But I want to hear straight from George Payton's mouth, like, this is why I didn't take Justin Fields, and then we can move on, right? Because again, I'm not the GM. Would I have taken Justin Fields? Maybe, but I didn't do all the studying of tape. I watched Justin Fields like 2 times, and it was in the college football playoff. So my point of view is skewed, right? But I just wish we could have that answer so that we could stop talking about it and just kind of move on. But also, if he comes out and says the reason why, then every time Justin Fields scores a touchdown, somebody's going to be tweeting out that quote. So I get it from his point. Like he's not going to come out and say it, right? But I think that's the one thing that I wish I could ask and get, a true answer to, even if it's like totally off the record, never put out there. I think that's the one question that I would want to know, especially if you're talking about this last few months.
I think us as fans kind of grab onto our own reason in our mind and just hold on to it very tightly, even though we don't actually have a reason. You just justify it in your own heart and your own minds. Why?
Avatar wants to know how many jerseys Glenn has in his museum or just in life.
And those are the only ones you can see on camera.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Signed probably about 35.
Holy moly!
I hate you so much. I'm moving in.
I mean, he just gave me one of them one time. I was just like, "You can just give like this is precious to me." And he's like, "Oh,
yeah, I'm old. I've been collecting over years." So.
Yeah, he's like,
was it like a Paxton Lynch jersey or something?
Rod Smith. It was Rod Smith.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's a good one. Wow.
He sent me a sign or an autographed picture of John Mobley, and I cried a little bit.
That's fair.
That's fair.
You know how hard it was for me to get that signature down? I mean,
EJ, should we be worried about Fant and Chubb's injuries if they'll be ready week 1? Chubb is ready. What is going on with Fant? Like,
we have no idea. It's a leg, and when we asked Vic the other day about it, he didn't go into detail. So, and he chose not to. He's like, I'm not going to go into that.
That's what freaks me out.
And I don't blame you for freaking out, but I guess we just have to take Vic at his word that they're both going to play week 1. But Vic is not. I've realized Vic is not going to give you a whole lot on the injury front. I don't know why, but that's just his I guess personality.
Yeah, he kind of gives you that Belichick answer, like 1 to 3 words.
Who's more fun to interview, Shermer or Vic?
I like Vic. I like Vic a lot because Vic is very forward. As I just said, that he doesn't give us a whole lot on injuries, but everything else he's very forward. He's not gonna lie or just blow smoke up your butt. Where Shermer, and I'm not saying Shermer does, but Shermer, Shermer sometimes, I don't know how to phrase this without like making it sound bad.
It really doesn't look like he wants to be there.
Yeah, like, I get that. Definitely get that feeling. And then there's sometimes that, like, for example, in Minnesota, we were watching practice in the first day of the joint practices with Minnesota. It was very clear the offensive line did not have a good day. They gave up several sacks. They had several penalties, fumbles, like fumbled snap, whatever. It was not a good day. And so the next day they had a really good day. And so I asked Pat, I just said, hey, it looked like the offensive line struggled a little bit. You guys looked a lot better today. What changed? What was the difference? And he goes, well, I didn't think we struggled yesterday. And I think everybody in the media was like, well, what exactly? Yeah. But again, that's just, again, I'm not a coach, so maybe he saw something that I didn't. But I think that Pat definitely, I think he does give off that vibe that sometimes he doesn't want to be there, but and he has a lot of head coach speak in him, and I think that's from his time being a head coach that he has a lot of that. And I don't think Vic has a lot of head coach speak in him. He's very straightforward. He's very short. He just gets to the point where, like, some head coaches, they just like to talk and talk and talk and not really give an answer, which is fine. I get that. That's part of the job. So I guess that's how I'd compare the two, but they're both good to talk to. I mean, Pat gives some really good insight, especially when it comes to the quarterbacks. Yeah. I think he gives some really good insight.
KBA2 says, love the show, fellas. I have to head out. I think Chad Kelly's trying to break into my house.
It's fair. Happens to the best of us.
Hide your vacuum cleaners.
Yeah.
Are Vic and Peyton as tight as they come across, or what's the relationship like there?
That's a good question, and I've wondered that. And we don't get to really see them much behind the scenes. Obviously they're both praising each other, but I'm sure there's a part of George that, this is a big year for Vic, and I think Vic knows that, and I think George knows that, and I'm sure they've talked about that behind closed doors, and I'm sure, I think Vic kind of told him, said, hey, this is what I need to win, or what he believes he thinks he needs to win. And that's why they went out and got the players that they did. I mean, you look at some of the signings that they got, and they're all type of players that Vic wants. And I think that George said, okay, year one, I'm going to go out and get the players that Vic wants because he deserves that chance. And then I think they're going to kind of go from there. And that will kind of, decide on what, Vic's future is with the Broncos. But I think they're close. I think that, George Paton he's a very old school guy. Yeah. And I think that that's why him and Vic get along, is because Vic is like the definition of an old school football coach, right? Like he's a grinder. He's straightforward, like I said, those sorts of things. So I think that's, I think they get along, but I think that's because they have a similar personality. Also, I don't know if you guys just heard, but a car just like went right by my apartment. Honda, super loud. Yeah. Well, and
Honda,
and it's
Integra.
And that car goes by at like 2 a.m. in the night too. And it wakes me up every single time. So I apologize.
Mufflers aren't important.
So I know what Johnny was going for, but I'm going to see if you can figure this one out. George, in your opinion, is what does Tom of?
Oh,
that's where I'm going to leave it.
What is it? I'm confused. Should I feel like I should know this.
This is what does Tom up.
Is this a question about Tom Bombadil?
He put, what does Tom McMahon have to truly do individually to save his job? I don't know where is what does Tom of. That's not part of that, but
Well, I think our other hosts, so we're professionals here. So,
well, you got to know that he typed that and was like, "Oh crap, he's gonna pull that up." Like,
well, I think one, you could start with not giving up any big returns. I think that needs to happen. I think another thing that needs to happen is just let Brandon McManus kick when he thinks he can kick field goals. Mm-hmm. I don't think you should. I think Brandon McManus is arguably the best field goal kicker in the league. And if he says, hey, I can make it from there, I think you let him kick it. Mm-hmm. I think that was a situation at one point last year. I can't remember what game that was, but and then I think I think they're showing a lot of faith in Deontay Spencer, right? And I think Deontay's a really good returner. But let's say he doesn't have the type of year that they hope he can. I think that falls a little bit on McMahon's shoulders. And so I think you just need good play, man. Like I think that we've seen it in preseason that it just has not been good. They're giving up, 30 plus yards on kickoff returns. They had a punt, sort of blocked, I guess. They've been good on field goals, which of course they're going to be with McManus. But I think that's the big, don't give up any big returns. And if you do that, then I think obviously, you have a chance to keep your job. But
here's an interesting spin on that one. So if you
I had a segue.
Too bad.
Took it away from me.
That's because Glenn does the segues now.
My job.
Yeah.
So if you look at McManus, where do you put McManus on the Denver Broncos kickers wheel? Are we looking at Elam McManus, or where are we putting McManus on that?
That's a question for you guys because I am not a Broncos historian, so I cannot sit here. I know Matt Prater played for the Broncos, and he's a good kicker.
Okay.
But other than that,
do you think McManus could outkick him? Could he kick a longer field goal than Prater or Elam?
Well, doesn't Prater have the?
Yeah, he has the record.
64, right?
64-yard field goal.
Where's McManus kicking the ball at?
50.
Well, let's stay Denver.
I don't think he's ever.
I
don't think he's ever getting
yardage.
past 60.
I think McManus could do it.
Yeah,
I think he could do it.
You think so?
Reportedly 75 in practices.
I was going to say last year in that game he wanted to kick a 67, right?
Yeah,
well, it was longer than that, I think.
Longer than that.
I like Brandon, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know Matt, so I can't pick him. But
so George, how would you describe McMahon's coaching style? Because we don't get to see him interact with the players. So when during camp, is he a yeller? Is he in your face? Is he?
Just to go out there and hit somebody.
Oh no, he's vocal. When it's special teams time because Tom's running around yelling things and just kind of running in circles, and he must be in really good shape because he's just like jogging all around the field and yelling certain things out. And they do, again, I've never covered I've never covered practices that you get to watch the whole practice because they don't do that in college or at least at Oklahoma. So I don't know what special teams drills look like other than what I did in high school.
Mhm.
And I was a lineman, so I never did special teams. But they do all these weird drills on special teams. And again, I don't know how to like contextualize that or like explain that, but it just looks weird. But yeah, he's very vocal. I think the players like him for the most part. I mean, I can't remember who it was the other day that said that Tom Mcmahon, deserves a lot of credit for something. I don't remember what it was, but I think the players relatively like him. And, I think it was Nate Hairston actually, because Nate Hairston played for him in Indianapolis on special teams. And he said, Tom's been great for him. And that was a big reason why Nate wanted to be in Denver.
Right.
Was because of that. So I think players like him. He's just very vocal. And I think he does things a little bit differently. Again, I've not seen other teams, how they do practice special teams, but it just seems, I don't know, different, I guess.
So we did claim Mike Ford and Nate McCrary off of waivers from Baltimore. Are they, you think, just special teamers were brought in specifically for that?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely Ford. Ford is definitely a special teams only guy. I think, he played some in Detroit, but I think, again, when you're in that cornerback room and really even safety, I mean, they took 5 safeties on the 53-man roster. I just don't think he'll see a ton of time playing in that defense. McCrary, I don't know a ton about him. I thought it was interesting. They must really like him because to add him to the 53-man roster and then obviously dump Royce and then put Crockett, who I thought Crockett, really had a good preseason and good camp, and then put him on the practice squad. Again, when Boone comes back, all of this is irrelevant. But they must have really seen something in McCrary to think that he's a guy that can be that third running back, these first couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, I know that when they made all the roster moves and Benson was gone, they brought Williams back onto the practice squad and Cleveland, that they were thinking, well, there's only 5 wide receivers. Is there like a big wide receiver move in the future? Or is there something that we're seeing that is going to be moving over here as a wide receiver, or are we going to stick with what we got?
I
mean, are we looking at like Megatron come back?
Yeah.
Because I'll take that.
Yeah, I think they really like the 4 again that I know they took 5, but the 4 main wide receivers, obviously when you have a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who again, I think he's going to have a monster year. I think we're talking 1,000+ yards, probably 8 touchdowns, maybe, I think. And the thing about Jeudy that I don't think I personally have brought up enough, and maybe others, is him and Bridgewater have a really close connection. And that was shown from first day of OTAs back in June. Bridgewater, it seemed like every play he was hitting Jeudy. And so they have a really good connection. So I think that's great. But, for the wide receiver room as a whole, again, I think that Seth and Tyree are both guys that they feel comfortable calling up if needed. I just don't think that I don't think they're going to make a move for someone else. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Cortland, just because, I know he had that great preseason game against the Rams and caught a touchdown pass, and that's great for his confidence. But he's in that boat of, if he doesn't produce this year, I don't think he'll get that extension that, George Payton has kind of talked about. And so this is big for him. And I think if he goes out and he shows that in the first few weeks that he is the same old Cortland Sutton, the guy that, made a Pro Bowl a couple years ago, I think that then obviously he's going to get that extension. But if not, then it's kind of interesting to see what they do there. And then obviously you have Tim Patrick, who's also, I believe, isn't he on his last year of his contract? And he's going to get paid, right? Like, he's a guy that deserves to get paid. So, it's an interesting room when you look at it that way.
Right. Hey, I wanted to get your insight on a comment that somebody made earlier in the chat, that they really didn't agree with the fact that Bridgewater got named quarterback 1, and that by doing that destroyed Drew Lock's confidence. Do you actually believe that Lock's confidence is shot? And if he were to get, named coming in for Bridgewater injured, how much would that affect the team's morale?
One, I don't think I can answer for Drew if his confidence is shot, but I would argue it's not. Drew's definitely a competitor, right?
Mhm.
And he's a guy that I think is going to continue to work to get better. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, look how much better he was, at least in my opinion, from those last 5 games of last season, right? Like he was pretty good, or not. I guess he was better than he was earlier, right?
Mhm.
And then you look at what he progressed from even those last 5 games to this preseason and training camp. He looked like a different player, right? And I don't think that it's in Drew's mindset that's like, I'm not quarterback 1. I'm not gonna, work to get better. And if that is his mindset, let's say his confidence is shot. Well, then, to be blunt, then maybe being an NFL quarterback is not a starting NFL quarterback is not something for him. Because if you want to be a starting NFL quarterback, there's only 32 of those jobs, and you've got to be extremely confident, and you've got to be one hell of a competitor to have one of those 32 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that whether it shot his confidence or not, I think that Drew has to continue to be that competitor and have that confidence in himself, because that's what makes Drew, right? Like we've seen him when he's at his best and he is confident in himself. He's an extremely good player at times. And sometimes he's overconfident. I think we've seen that as well.
Yeah.
But I think he's learning how to balance that. So again, I know everybody is, or I guess not everybody, but a good majority of fans wanted Drew Lock to win the job, right? At least from what I could tell on social media. But in my opinion, and maybe this is the wrong opinion, and people will say I'm biased for the team or whatever, I think this is the best thing for Drew Lock's future as a quarterback. I really do. And I think that this is a very good learning experience. I mean, you think about it. I asked him, a couple weeks ago in Minnesota, have you ever been in a quarterback competition? And he said no. The last time was maybe his sophomore year of high school, but he said even then he was expected to win the job. He was going to be the guy. So for him this is the first time in his career that he's ever had to take a back seat to anyone. And I think that that's a good learning experience for someone like him who has, we've seen the arm talent. We know what type of player he can be with the talent. I think that sometimes it's the mindset. So I again, you can say maybe his confidence is shot or whatever, but I think this is a good thing for Drew. And I think maybe it doesn't happen in Denver, but I think eventually it pays dividends.
Yeah.
So what's the headline in the paper the day after the 17th game against the Chiefs? Is it Broncos preparing for the playoffs, or is it the season ends disappointedly?
Again, maybe I'm being too optimistic, and maybe tomorrow I'll be pessimistic and say there's no way. I think they make the playoffs, and the only reason I say that is you look at the beginning of their schedule. I think they should start 3-0. The Giants have a lot of problems going on. Then you get to play, 2 rookie quarterbacks, which I can't remember the stat, but there's some crazy stat out there. Yeah, that Vic is like unbelievable against rookie quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get Baltimore, right? You go on a tough stretch there, but I don't think the Raiders. I think the Raiders are on the verge of a
collapse.
Yes, a huge collapse if they're not already like there. I think the Chargers
pay their taxes.
Yeah. I think the Chargers are the interesting team in the division because they are a young team. Obviously, they have a first-year head coach. And that's the only reason I'm picking the Broncos to finish second in the division over the Chargers, is because I think anytime you have a first-year head coach, no matter how good they are, it's always sort of a learning experience for that head coach. And as much as I think Staley's a great guy and I think he's going to be successful there, and obviously you have a young quarterback, I just think that the Broncos are a more talented team. And again, I know Herbert isn't a rookie quarterback anymore, but I do think that this veteran defense can maybe take some advantage there. So if they can beat the Chargers or even split with them, I think they can make the playoffs, because my bold prediction of the year is that they do beat the Chiefs. And the reason, not in Kansas City, but that last game in Denver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only reason I'm picking them to beat the Chiefs is I'm 100%, or not 100% positive, but 99% positive that Patrick Mahomes is probably not going to be playing in that game.
Right.
And I think Chad Henne is their backup. And I'm just going to say that I think that this secondary is going to pick him apart. And so I think that last game, I think there's going to be a scenario that, they're going into that last game, and if they beat the Chiefs, they make the wild card.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they beat the Chiefs and make the wild card because the Chiefs are probably the number 1 seed or they already know their fate, right? But maybe I'm wrong. Again, I'm the newcomer. Maybe the Chiefs maybe that rivalry is so big that the Chiefs say, screw that, we're going to go beat the Broncos so that they don't make the playoffs. I mean, that could be a very real thing. But that's the way I think they're going to go 10-7 or 11-6 and make the playoffs. I've been on the 9-8 train most of the offseason, but I'm starting to convince myself that they're going to go 3-0. I think they obviously beat the Lions. I think they beat the Raiders twice. So that's 6 wins right there. And then I think they should beat the Eagles. That's 7.
I think the Steelers are crumbling too.
I think the Steelers, they can win that game.
That's
I think
a revenge game for us.
Yeah. Washington.
We won that game last year.
I think they can beat Washington.
That's going to be a tough one though. I think
agree.
Washington's going to be it might be a trap game.
Chase Young.
Let's say they split with the Chargers. That's up to 8-9 wins right there. And then they gotta win. They gotta steal one, right? That's why I said they gotta steal one against the Chiefs, Dallas. Even I guess Pittsburgh, quote unquote, steal from Pittsburgh.
My sneaky pick is Ravens. I think
Ravens. Yeah.
I think that we might be able to corral Lamar Jackson a bit. Now our offense would probably still have a hard time against that defense, but I think that might be the sneaky one. I think everyone's expecting the Ravens to win that game, and I think we might get them on that one.
I think we had us going 12-5 on accident. We were like, it's going to be 10-7, and then we went through the schedules like, 12-5. All right,
yeah.
So we need to start wrapping things up here. So I only have 2 questions for you.
Oh, jeez.
One, who's your favorite Broncos player ever?
Mine.
Yeah, historic now, a couple years ago, and who's your favorite one?
You can say Robin Williams, cheerleader. Also,
that's tough. I grew up. I was in high school when the Broncos were going on that run with Peyton Manning, and I remember watching Demaryius Thomas and just thinking that he was just amazing, and I always thought he was underrated. Like I always felt like when people talked about like the best wide receivers in the league at that time, Demaryius Thomas's name just for some reason was always forgotten, and I was like, the dude is like unbelievable. And I remember, and this was before Manning. I remember watching the Tebow game against the Steelers, and Demaryius Thomas taking that ball and scoring. Obviously, I think it was a breakdown on the Steelers' part, but I was like, man, that dude can fly. I think of Champ Bailey. He was obviously fantastic. I'm trying to think of who else. Peyton, I guess. That'd be a cop-out answer. I'm trying to think. I love to keep Talib because he just didn't shut up, and I love guys like that. I love guys that just are so confident in their game that they'll just say anything. What
a fun interview that would have been.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, those teams. I mean, again, I could go way back. My dad was a big John Elway guy. But of course I was like 3 years old when he won the Super Bowl, those 2 Super Bowls. So, getting to know Steve Atwater, I think I would have really liked Steve. I mean, Steve would have been up there. The one that, again, I've talked to him a couple times for different stories, and I've obviously never watched him play because I wasn't alive. It's Randy Gradishar. And he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Orange Crush, all that stuff. So I just listed a bunch of guys, but if I had to pick one, if you said it, gun to my head, you got to pick one. I'd probably pick Demaryius Thomas just because I remember watching him so much.
Good choice.
In high school. And I think I want to say he was on my fantasy team when I was in high school.
Yeah, mine too.
He was a monster. So I'd probably say him.
So this last question, I didn't ask the last like 2 or 3 times. But it's probably the most difficult question you'll ever have to ask or answer. Would you rather face a T-Rex sized chicken or 100 chicken sized T-Rexes?
100. The 100. Because I think it was Shelby Harris that answered that question. He said you could just start kicking them. I think that was him who said that. If you're facing one of the
like,
do you guys realize how? Do you realize how big a T-Rex how big that is?
But it's still just a chicken.
No, it doesn't matter.
No, dude, the chicken will think you're like corn or something. Mm-hmm. Just like it could step on you. It could step on you and you're dead.
T-Rexes are still meat eaters. Like they're going to come after you.
Yeah, but they're tiny. They're tiny. You have a better shot at just like.
Hey, I've seen some pretty massive chickens coming out of them.
Chickens will peck anything.
Yeah. You couldn't. I don't think you could kill, at least not in one shot. Like if you had a gun and you shot a T-Rex sized chicken, you would not kill it automatically.
Like bagong, and just like knock it out.
But if you just get up on like a step stool, if you just get on a step stool and had a gun, you could kill all the little chicken T-Rexes.
Yep.
Bree says you're gonna kick a bunch of T-Rexes.
Yes, I am.
They're coming at you. You had no choice.
I'm still going against the T-Rex sized chicken. It's a chicken.
How are you beating it?
Yeah.
How are you beating it?
With a rock.
You're not going to make it.
Hide.
You're not going to make it to wherever you're trying to hide to.
How do you know I won't make it?
This is an open field situation. You're in an open field.
What's your 40 time? What's your 40 time?
Mike is trained in hand-to-hand combat. So
4.14.
Doesn't matter. Chicken doesn't catch
you. Didn't say 40 feet.
Rolling down a hill. That's what my 40 time is.
It's gonna like lift enough to drop the people's elbow right on your neck. Like
deep frying it. That's a good one, Bree. Deep frying.
Yeah, deep frying it. That's right.
Each of those 100 chickens.
Okay, so now that we've got that one out of the way, it has been an absolute pleasure being here with all of you today. And we also want to send out a huge thank you to George for joining us. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. If you want people to, and I always say if you want to, because you never know. If you want people to find you, where it be on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or any social media or anywhere else, where do you want them to find you at?
Yeah. Twitter is my baby. So come follow me on Twitter. I'm usually tweeting about Broncos or like memes, or I went to the Hall & Oates concert last night, so I tweeted about that. But find me on Twitter. It's just my name, George Stoia, Stoia.
All right.
So make sure you are liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, and turning on notifications to us and to George as well, so you can catch all the content when it is posted. And make sure you're tuning in to Broncos Talk, hosted by 6'10" and Rich every Tuesday at 7654. Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast on their new night of Friday. So tomorrow at 7654. And the biggest news, MHRT Networks' brand new pregame show, The Neigh-borhood, is going to air live before every Broncos game, and we'll be joined by Broncos fan Dave Glassman, and we're going to have a tailgate check-in with the Mile High Prophet at every Broncos home game on The Neigh-borhood. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Right? You can also catch all the audio versions of all the MHRT Networks podcasts on all the major podcast streaming services. Links are in the description. We love you all. We love Broncos country, and go Broncos. Now, we have to end this in the traditional way of a mile high five. George, you know what that is.
Is that the...
Hands out. So all I'm going to do is hold your hands out. I'm going to yell it, and then we're going to clap. Everybody ready?
Let's do it.
Mile high five. Woo! All you got to do.
So
amazing.
Cool.
We are just
it's so amazing.
So amazing. Cool.
All right.
So many followers.
We will see everybody tomorrow on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange Blue podcast. Bye, everybody.
Hasta luego.